This chapter is about transformation, pattern recognition, and helping people. One of the most defining elements of my work is something that many people struggle to name, but they absolutely experience it when they encounter it. Over the years, I began to notice that transformation followed recognizable patterns and recognizable rhythms in people, not just emotional rhythms, not just leadership rhythms, but patterns that influence how leaders make decisions, how they structure their organizations, how they communicate with their teams, and ultimately how they grow or stall their business. So, this chapter that we're going to be talking about today, this chapter is about rhythm. You know, the beat, the current, the underlying sound. And it's about how I recognize and learn how to transform these patterns, these rhythms in people, what the signals look like, what the resistance points were, and what I call hello moments, which are the breakthrough moments that show up in the midst of transformation. Because transformation is not random, although many people seem to think it is. Transformation is predictable in the ways that many people don't realize. And when leaders learn how to recognize the patterns or the rhythms early, they stop reacting to change and start guiding it. The patterns that I help organizations and leaders recognize don't just change how they think. I used to say, change how you think and it'll change your results. But it isn't just that, it changes how their organizations operate, how they communicate, how they grow, and most importantly, how people are transformed. So, I want to talk to you about what types of leadership problems and business problems that I've seen over the years that are repeatedly being brought to me. One of the major problems, we're going to start with this, is communication. And it, I think, starts with recognizing the repeated behaviors of a lack of trust in their own decision making or their own decisions. When a leader has a communication problem, it's generally not because they don't know how to talk. It isn't because they don't know how to make decisions. It's because they don't trust the decisions that they are making. And that shows up and looks like they have a difficulty communicating with their staff. Now, what do I mean by that? They will make the people do way more than they need to justify the decisions that they make because the leader does not trust their own decision. And unfortunately, when that happens, the leader has results that show up in incomplete production, um, initiatives that don't get completed, lack of production measurements or measuring tools, um, stalled sales, marketing designed programs that are not structured to support the sales plan or the sales projections. In the context of business, it impacts almost all the areas: sales and marketing, production and operations, finance and management, and most importantly, human resources, training, soul, and strategy. Now, why do I say most importantly? Because the individual who has a difficulty communicating is not just having a difficulty communicating with their staff, they're having a difficulty communicating the situation to themselves. And that is translated into a lack of identity, a lack of understanding who they are, what they stand for, what their expectations are, what their values are. And you would say, well, surely if they're running a company, if they are a leader, they have those um, understandings, but that generally is not the case. I think about when I see it and how I recognize it is when we see leaders who they give their staff responsibility without authority. And that's a trust issue, not a trust issue in the employee or the staff member, but a lack of trust in themselves. I see it when they have a difference between how they measure success personally and how it's measured in the organization. I see it when the teams have a difficulty bringing new ideas, new methods, new plans to the leader because they are all shut down, especially if it's a leader who tends to want to have all of the glory but not any of the grit. Like they don't want to work for it. They want their staff to do it and then they want to take the fame for it. And generally, those are communication issues because the person isn't truly communicating what success looks like to them, to their team, and they're not allowing the team members to feel successful in their own right. Um, what I've done to shift this as a guide, as a strategic advisor, is to have the leaders take moments to sit down and communicate what they're seeing in their organization. We use this method called yes and no but. Yes and I'm sure a lot of you have heard this before, yes and is uh, an opportunity to open the door for more input, for more data gathering. As a leader, when you don't trust your own decisions, it rolls over into not trusting the people who you've hired. And unfortunately, when they're not empowered, the initiatives can stall because of fear of repercussions for not following through. It can cause passing the buck mentality. I'm not responsible for it, they're responsible for it type of thing. So people take hands off because of the lack of authority to make decisions. And if the leader does not have the ability to trust their own instincts, trust their own decisions, then what happens is they start to do what we call a narcissistic behavior, where it's all me when things are good and it's never me when things are bad. But that's because they haven't opened the door to communicate their expectations, their um, observations, and receive the feedback from the team in a way that they can integrate it into the projections, into the plans, into the operational procedures in a way that allows them to trust that the people have the same loyalty, the same expectation, the same vision of where the company is going. The leadership lesson that I see in this is that when people have a clear understanding of their expectations, and when they have the authority to make decisions with coaching from their leader, they are better able to make stronger decisions and to take ownership of the decisions that they have made. I advise leaders today to what I call stop, look, and listen. When you're stopping and looking and listening, you're looking for more data that strengthens or questions what your thinking is on a particular situation. And what happens is that when you're in a communication situation, you can use the stop, look, and listen methodology in an individual one-on-one conversation, in the reports and things that you receive, because when you stop and don't come in with preconceived notions, but looking at it for what data can you gather to make stronger decisions, and listen to what the data is telling you, you have the opportunity to make stronger decisions. I've seen this in companies where the leader is the only one that makes the final decision. And when I give them the tools to empower their people to have both the authority and the responsibility, they are able to focus, meaning the leader, the CEO, is able to focus on higher level decision making. But it does require that you be aware of how you think and what you add as meaning making to the thoughts that you have about why a person didn't complete an assignment, why you're not getting input, or why there's always tension in the meetings. Not all tension is bad, but if you're shutting down all ideas, then it makes it difficult for good ideas to raise up through the process so that your team can grow, your business can expand. So, as a leader, I suggest you stop, look, and listen to what the data, the information, and your team is saying.